Okay, everybody. I am going to. I can't get this straight. Anyways, I am going to read um, Ecclesiastes 3:1-8, and I have this on my fridge. Just kind of remind me that everything changes, you guys, in our lives. And some people think, well, you're supposed to be here, and you said you were going to be here, so you have to do it for the rest of your life. No, God changes seasons and times in our lives, and when God says, well, I want you to be here for a while, then you do it. And then when God says, well, okay, that season's over, but the people in your life, they think, well, you told us you were going to pray for this church, or you told us you're going to do this ministry for, and now you're not. It's like, you know what? Everything changes, you guys. Just because God calls you into a ministry doesn't mean that you're going to be there for the rest of your life, okay? So, to say that, that's what I've been kind of thinking about, and I thought, Lord, everything changes. The seasons change, people get older, you change your clothes every day. I mean, why wouldn't the things in God's kingdom change? He even says it right here. And everything has its time. He even gives lists. Okay, so I'm going to read Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. Everything has its own time. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pick what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weed and a time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to reflect from embracing. A time to gain and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. Everything has its time. That I keep this on my fridge, and it's like, it reminds me when things don't go my way. It's like, oh yeah, I can look at this and I can say, yeah, everything has its own time. So, God might call you into something for a season. It's only for a season, you guys. And then He calls you out to do other things. Don't let the enemy come in and say, oh, you lied. You were supposed to do this and you didn't. Even when you clearly know it's God's will for you to be in a new season. You will know when you're in a new season, because everything around you will be, you'll just know. You'll be going, I don't want to do this anymore. Sometimes you have to press in. I understand that. Sometimes you have to press in and just endure the ministry maybe God's called you to do. Maybe it's praying for people, maybe it's just going visiting the homeless, or babysitting, whatever God's called you to do. And you'll think, and when you think about should like when I started cleaning the church in Denver, I'll give you a good example of what I'm talking about. I felt like God told me I didn't have to be a maid anymore. God's descriptions are sometimes different than ours. And I was like, what do you mean, God? Well, I still kept on cleaning the church. I wasn't like doing heavy cleaning. I was just going in and picking up paper off the floor. You know, so it looked nice, you know, the sanctuary. They would have 2 services on Sunday, and then on Monday I'd go in and clean up. And then it would look nice for whoever wanted to go in there and pray, or it would help them out. Well, I just felt like, and then I got revelation too on that, in that time of cleaning the church. You know, if you want revival, start cleaning the church, get the house ready for the company, and revival will happen. That's what God told me about cleaning the church, because I was a little bit complaining how messy the church was. But God told me every little piece of paper you pick up is more inner healing. And at that time and that season that the Lord had me clean the church in Denver, picking up the paper off the floor and putting it in the trash. It was a simple little thing. I mean, it didn't take no energy, and it was just something to help the other people out. But in that time, God gave me revelation of what He was doing. He was cleaning up my insides, my emotions, my way of thinking, one piece at a time. So I just kept on thinking, Lord, I don't want to do this anymore. We were moving, and I was like, Lord, I did that ministry for 1.5 years. And we were there. No, I did that ministry probably for about 6 months, maybe. I don't know. We were there for 1.5 years. Anyways, at that church. And so I would, I think I did that for 6 months. I'm not sure. But in the time I did that, another person came along and helped. And they're like, oh, and they started talking about the messy church. So I told them, you know, what do you do we were visiting, and I said, what do you do when you have company? And she's like, well, I clean my house. And I was like, well, what do you think we're doing? We're cleaning God's house for the company, for revival to hit. And after God showed me that, it's like, you know, I started noticing, that was before the 2 services. I started noticing more people started showing up, so they had to have 2 services. And, but that ended that season in my life. There's been many seasons, and you will just know. Sometimes God will you'll be gradually into that new season. You'll be going, oh, this is different. I'm not doing anything different, but I feel different inside. Sometimes God will show you, like this new season I'm in, God showed me an actual book, and it was open, but a page was turning. And as the page landed on the other side of the book, you know, I could see the page turning. And it's like, it actually, God gave me a countdown time. I was like, thanks, Lord. But, you know, and it was all fresh and new. And it's like, I just felt in my spirit, it's like, everything kind of went crazy. Because I wanted the old season. But when God changes and God says, okay, it's a new season. You're in a new season. And you go, yeah, but I'm supposed to do this ministry. I'm supposed to do this ministry. And now you're telling me it's a new season. So I'm backing out, I'm backing off. You know what? Sometimes God does that, you know, and it's like everything in my being wanted to stay with that ministry or this thing I'm doing. And finally, God woke me up last night, actually. So it's very fresh. This is very fresh teaching that I'm teaching you about. Very fresh. I mean, still the frustration level of trying to do everything the way I was used to, the way I've done things for the last 2 years. You know, that frustration level is still there. But as God's writing on the new chapter in my life, the new season, I'm seeing that things are calming down. You know, and I still want to go here and do that and do this, but I'm really enjoying just the time that God has me. He said 6 months. I want you not to do anything for 6 months. And I'm like, what? You know, I got commitments here, commitments there, and God's like, back up and take 6 months. And I counted. It's like April, May, June, July, August, September, November. So in November, November 3rd, you know, and so it's like in November, it's like, okay, that'd be 6 months. But in this new season, you know, when we try to fight the seasons that God, the new seasons God has for us, everything might go wrong. Okay, everything might go wrong when you're trying to fight. You're like, I don't want to change. No, I don't want to. Everything might go wrong. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. Things might get really messy. You might be bickering with friends. You might lose friends. You might, you know, fight with your family. You might feel uncomfortable just being in your own skin, I guess you could say. Everything would be different. I mean, you'd be going, why am I fighting with my family? Why this, why that? You know what? You gotta look at the times and seasons. Everything has its own time. Everything, you guys. Everything has its own time. You know, you might be going, well, I wish we had church that way again. I wish that person wouldn't have left. I wish it would have been this way. You know what? Those times and seasons are gone. Okay, they're gone. I can never get back the season I was in. You know, and about 2 months ago, I felt like God was stirring in my heart about change. I'm talking about change when I'm talking about new seasons. You know, the new things in your life. I'm talking about change, and sometimes change comes easy. Sometimes it comes hard. Sometimes it's very, very difficult. Sometimes you almost feel like you want to cry. That's all. Like this afternoon, I was like, God, all I want to do is cry. That's what I did. I just sat on my back porch like I do, and I just cried. And I told God exactly how I talked to Him just like I'm talking to you. And as I said, my frustration, and He just listened. You know, God He's a good listener. So everything changes, you guys. Everything in our life. You know, people might say, well, you're supposed to be doing this ministry for the rest of your life. You know, no. Everything changes. And if people tell you that, I'd be like, that's a warning sign to say, you know what? God, I take orders from God and God only. or if your family falls apart, that's a good indication something's got to change. You got to look at what you're doing for God is more important than your family, or what you're doing is your family more important. And I know that a lot of people think, well, no, God comes first in everything. You know what? There's a fine line there. I can be doing all the things. I could do all the things for God and lose my family. Or I could say, okay, Lord, I'm trusting you. Because if I lose my family over maybe, if I lose what God's blessed me with over a stupid thing that God's called me to do, and God says new change, and I still want it, if I fight that, I could lose everything. And at that time, when the frustration gets that intense, when you need to, if you can, with a family member or your spouse or a friend or a church board or whatever, when that frustration level gets that high and you can't even communicate, you need to take that other person and you need to go to breakfast with them and really sit down and say, something's got to change or we're in big trouble. Okay? That's when you have to step back. You have to step back and say, okay, I'll surrender. I'll surrender to God's will. I'll surrender to what God wants. God's still gonna love you. That's what I learned on Sunday. We went to a different church to visit, and I felt like a fresh breath air. It's like, whoa, everything was different. I mean, the church was a lot quieter. The presence of God was sweet there, but it was different. It was totally, it was more quieter, more reserved. It wasn't so much show. It's just a very simple church. And I'm used to flags waving, people dancing, loud music. I'm used to all that. But, sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not good. But you know what? When God says you need to change, don't fight Him. Just say, okay. Even if you lose everything, even if you have to back off and say, okay, I back off. I resign from this position. I resign from that. I resign. I'm not doing this no more. Everything changes, you guys. Everything changes. And people say, how do you leave a church or a ministry the right way, right? Some people just leave. The right way is to pray about it. Say, God, you show me. Am I supposed to just stay here? Or am I supposed to just press on and endure? Because the enemy will put things in your pathway. But the right way is to pray about it. Give it some time and pray. And that's what I did for the last 2 months. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Bye.